Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the HACR virtual event. My name is Dr. Lizette Garcia, and I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at HACR. We're very excited for this discussion today, featuring representatives from companies who've participated in this year's Corporate Inclusion Index. This discussion will highlight some of the trends that we've observed across HACR's 4 pillars: employment, procurement, philanthropy, and governance. Using data from the HACR CII, we'll focus on how companies overcome challenges and embrace opportunities to create best practices for increasing Hispanic inclusion in corporate America. Before we get into that discussion, I want to remind you to download our event app and to use it to check out the upcoming sessions, to learn more about our speakers and our sponsors, and receive important announcements, as well as engage with your peers through the community feature. If you need assistance with the app, please stop by our help desk to download the instructions. Also, don't forget to visit our sponsor booths and the HACR Research Institute booth in the exhibit hall. There's a lot of great information available to you at the click of your mouse. Now, without further ado, I'd like to get this conversation started by welcoming Eric Lopez, HACR's Director of Corporate Accountability, to introduce himself and today's featured panelists. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Lisette. I'm the Director of Corporate Accountability at HACR, and what I do for the most part is manage and direct the Corporate Inclusion Index, its administration to our participating companies, and the analysis of the data. And today, we will be discussing how participating companies have leveraged the HACR Corporate Inclusion Index to improve their diversity inclusion practices. To get started, let's introduce our panel. With us today, we have Tony Castañón, Head of Operations, City Retail Services at Citigroup. We also have Jackie Puente, Executive Director, External Affairs at Comcast. And we have Sandra Sims-Williams, Senior Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at Nielsen. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll start with an introductory question to all of our panel participants. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and your role with the diversity and inclusion initiatives at your companies.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for the opportunity to participate today. And for my fellow panelists, I am Tony Castañón, and I work for Citi. I'm responsible for operations for the retail services business within Citi's Consumer Bank. And I'm also a member of Citi's Hispanic and Latino Affinity Network. So I'm a co-sponsor of the Affinity Network at Citi, and happy to be here today to talk about these important topics.
I'll go next. My name is Jackie Puente, and I'm the Executive Director for External Affairs at Comcast, NBC Universal, Telemundo. And in my role, I sort of sit between a number of different functions here in Washington, D.C., where I work with our Diversity Inclusion Office, I work with our Government Affairs Office, Corporate Communications, our Community Investment Group, and make sure that we're working closely with our national partnerships through national partners across many different segments that help inform all of our business and all of our strategy across Comcast, NBC Universal, and Telemundo.
Hi, everyone. I thank you for inviting me to be a panel, and to my esteemed panelists, thank you for being a part of this. I am Sandra Sims-Williams. I am the SVP for Diversity and Inclusion at Nielsen. 8 months. 7 weeks into stay at home. So it's been quite a ride. So I am responsible for developing the strategy for diversity and inclusion for Nielsen, which covers people, of course, the thought leadership and inclusive products that we develop, the supplier diversity, as well as community alliance. So it's been quite a development over each month as to where do we start. This should be a very interesting conversation for sure.
I hope so, Sandra. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'd like to start with the theme for this year's survey report. The theme this year is Harnessing Support Networks, which includes mentors and sponsors. We've analyzed the data from this year's survey and found that 86% of this year's survey participants indicated that they have mentorship programs at their companies, while 74% indicated that they have sponsorship programs. Tell us about your diverse leadership and what role programs such as mentorships and sponsorships play in ensuring there's a diverse pipeline of talent at each of your companies. Let's start with Sandra.
Okay. Mentors and sponsors are very relevant to all of us, certainly me personally, but I am a supporter of all the programs that we've developed, but this is very critical, I believe. At Nielsen, our representation numbers told us that we needed to increase actually diversity of mid-career talent as well as senior leadership talent. At the same time, our ERGs, our Employee Resource Group members, were telling us that they wanted a more robust program that they can utilize for driving this and to give more access to them, to the leaders in our organization. At that point, we launched a global mentoring program in July of 2019. When the participation rate was through the roof. It was about 5,000 participants in 90 countries. 25% of the people managers were participating. OLA, which is our ERG, launched their own mentoring program in 2018. It was on the MentorClick platform, which we had put in place, and they integrated their mentoring on that platform. Associates are now able to select if they want their manager to be a part of the ERG so that they can better identify with them. The next step for us is a sponsorship by our senior executives. And you know, this goes beyond mentoring. Being someone's sponsor means that you are their voice when they're not in the room. You're helping them in terms of their talent reviews. You're championing them, you're providing them with stretch opportunities and introducing them to other leaders that can help them. I believe that this is a big part of advancing people throughout the organization. And we find it's effective. It's an effective way to get these diverse talent in front of leaders. This has been proven by the participants of our diverse leadership network. It's called the DLN. It's a mini MBA style program. And I have to say personally, the members that have gone through the program that I have met at Nielsen in these last 8 months are very high quality and high potential talent. And they are 2.5 times really higher than their high performing peers. So I am pleased to continue that program as I am now leading this strategy for DNI.
Thank you, Sandra. And you brought up this topic of champions. What role do champions play in bringing up Latino leadership within Comcast to that senior level?
Thanks, Eric, and thank you. These are great questions, and I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. Since I joined Comcast 8 years ago, you know, one of the things that's really struck me about our company, and as we've participated in the HACR surveys in the past, is that this is something that's driven from the top of our company, from our chairman and CEO, Brian Roberts, to David Cohen, who I've worked for the past 8 years. That this is something that really is a part, not just of what we say is our DNA, but really the metrics of how we evaluate all of our business operations. And you know, one of the things that I think about when we have a conversation with HACR or we're talking with our partners about what we're doing to really increase networks or increasing the ability of our workforce to reflect our society, is that we have these champions across all of our business units, and we've organized how we develop metrics and benchmarks very similarly to how HACR has its corporate inclusion index. Right, so we created an external joint diversity council that looks at this data and identifies, you know, these champions across our business, and they look at it in similar terms from procurement, governance, community investment, procurement, and we also have kind of our fifth pillar being programming because of the representation issues in front of and behind the camera. So we've been able to stake out champions in all of these areas that really drive our business results, whether we're talking about what we're doing in procurement, whether we're talking about what we're doing in governance. And I think that's how we've been able to achieve really visible, measurable results year over year. And when we look at our workforce now, which you think about a technology media company, we're 44% diverse. We have a 50% diverse board, and I think that really shows you that at the top of our leadership, these are important considerations, and that people who may not be the most obvious champions necessarily are people who don't exclusively sit in a diversity inclusion role. They're thinking through these in their everyday jobs.
Excellent point, Jackie. And I really love what you brought up. Benchmarking has been, a really big topic for us. Last year's report was actually on tracking and benchmarking. This year, while the theme is a little different, we still focus on that. And you also mentioned diversity councils, which is something that has come up, particularly this year, as something that companies are utilizing to increase their diversity and inclusion practices. But before we get there, I'd like to ask Tony to step in and talk a little bit more about ERGs and ERG participation in helping to increase the diversity of companies, particularly at Citi.
Thank you, Eric, and to Jackie and Sandra's commentary. We're similar in many, many ways. I would also say that part of what drives us from a cultural perspective at Citi is the fact that we're present in over 150 countries, and when we think about our opportunities globally and how we can reflect the engagement of our employees locally, it is a critical part of our strategy. Our affinity groups, which is what we refer to as our ERG groups, our affinity groups are the key and the backbone to driving not only our recruitment, but our employee engagement across the company in North America. When you think about diversity and inclusion, and not only through race or origin or orientation, families, disabilities, Citi has really embarked on a very comprehensive effort to ensure that all of our employees are included. I would also say that our allies are even more important, right? And part of what we've done and have been able to really successfully drive is that engagement of allies for various affinity groups to participate and learn, and through conversations get to meaningful outcomes. So it's a long journey. It's a journey that has taken us quite some time, but we have taken some pretty strong steps to make sure that we differentiate ourselves from our peers in making diversity and inclusion a critical topic for our recruitment and our retention of key talent within the organization.
Eric, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Tony, when I was developing ERGs, we call them actually BRGs in my former company, we actually aligned with your Pride ERG, and we did projects with them. And I think that also is a very important piece to actually intersecting and making sure that we learn from each other, we develop forward, and there is actually support for each other in developing our talent. So I think it's a very important piece to the ERGs, BRGs.
Yes, and I would just add, I think your point around sharing across companies is such a great opportunity to learn and to expand the learnings that we all have. I know that we tend to do that more often than not, because it's just a great way to team up and share those best practices across companies.
But as we know, corporate inclusion is more than about employee demographics. Diverse suppliers also play a critical role in securing success for corporations across the country. This year, 79% of companies reported having supplier development initiatives, yet Hispanic suppliers continue to represent less than 1% of all suppliers. However, this is in large part due to the fact that companies aren't able to track the diversity of their suppliers. They aren't able to tell us which suppliers are Hispanic or African American or any other group. So tell us a little bit about why tracking is important on your procurement practices and in increasing the diversity of your businesses you're contracting with.
Okay.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. I'm waiting to see where this goes. But I think this is something where, again, I say that this is where our partnerships with external organizations have really helped us develop better metrics for tracking and really have helped us kind of shape what company we want to be in the future in the procurement space. And so, Comcast, again, was the first media and technology company to join the billion dollar roundtable, sorry. And from that, once you're counting all of those dollars and developing all those relationships, we crossed the $1 billion mark with Hispanic businesses in spend since 2010, and that represents, I looked through the numbers this morning, it's almost an 1,000% increase over 10 years in spend with the Hispanic community, and it's very intentional, right? So we've had a team under Peter Kyriakalakis, our Chief Procurement Officer, working around the clock to identify these partnerships, to identify areas where we could help develop potential partners to be able to scale their businesses to the size and scale that Comcast, NBC Universal requires. And then it's been it's a long-standing process to make sure that we are counting all these dollars at tier 1 and tier 2 levels and making sure that we're bringing in the best businesses that can fit what we need going forward.
Great, thank you, Jackie. You brought up an interesting point about scale, and it's one of the topics that I hear often from companies about, well, how do we get suppliers to scale to do business with us? How do we move them from tier 2 to tier 1, the diverse suppliers that we are contracting with? Are there any thoughts, Sandra, on how diversity initiatives at your company are helping to develop those suppliers that are diverse into tier 1 suppliers if they're not there already?
Yeah, so I would say to you that coming into Nielsen, I was pleasantly surprised by the work that had already been done. And I do believe that supplier diversity programs are absolutely needed. It helps close the racial and economic gaps for enhancing our own business. But this global pandemic has really done a number and constrained the economics and business environment, and sorely when we talk about diverse vendors, this has affected them. But we are certainly making sure that we continue to help them by, we put them on our, what is called a news break. We feature one each week. We also have a program where we are helping them sort of retrack and get back on track and identify the needs that they have in order to stay live. So we are doing things that can help enhance their specific business challenges right now. And I'm very proud of that because I do know that, diverse vendors are so far down the line when it comes to trying to get contracts. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that we keep them in front of our leaders in particular.
Thank you, Sandra. And that is very important. I think that for a long time, we have seen that diverse vendors were already struggling to get in front of those leaders, as you said. But now with the current pandemic, things have gotten much harder for them. Tony, can you enlighten us on some of the things that Citi is also doing to help those diverse vendors get in front of decision makers at your company?
Yeah, Eric, thank you. And yes, I think concur with all of the other panelists' comments around the environment that we're in today and the challenges that we face and that this pandemic is creating. And I would say that it starts with measurement, right? How do we measure the effectiveness? And so corporate-wide, we have monitoring systems that are in place to monitor our procurement practices through very clear supplier diversity performance goals, right? So it's not just about the large players. And if you think about the scale of Citi, we also at times, we need both suppliers that can meet the scale needs of Citi and Citi's needs as a large multi-national company, as well as focusing on innovation through smaller suppliers that bring those ideas that are in incubation, right? And so through a number of efforts that Citi has, we work with smaller suppliers to try to identify opportunities and help them bring those ideas to market. So it's a commitment across all levels of Citi. Management is focused on this, and we communicate clearly to both our prospective suppliers as well as to all of our stakeholders what our vision is around helping to diversify our supply base. Our innovation centers really are at the heart of engaging and bringing those ideas forward. We do quite a bit with startups to try to bring their ideas to market and bring them forward to help not only Citi, but to help innovate as well.
Eric, if I can jump in here too, I feel sort of a responsibility because I'm also a board member for the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, which I know is a member of the HACR board. And I think there's another important point here, kind of under the larger umbrella of corporate social responsibility, to be engaged in this ecosystem, and that whether you're talking about at the national or global level, down to the state and local level, there are so many resources to help companies get through this, and particularly during this economic, difficult time that we're in. I think there is a very elaborate ecosystem here where we can identify talent and identify solutions and some of the innovators, to Tony's point, that really will help turn our business around. And I think all businesses around, right? I think that this is a time when for so many years we've been very focused on Hispanic consumers, right? The Hispanic households that are driving growth for every company in America, and who better to help us reconnect with those households, and who better to help us identify the new products and services that they need than these vendors that may be in a local chamber or maybe in a regional chamber, but with the help of partners like the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and other organizations, they can get the resources and the exposure they need to bring those to the larger marketplace.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jackie. And so many really great themes were identified between the conversation that we just had on this very question, identifying talent, solutions, new markets. Tony mentioned measuring and the importance of tracking metrics. As we close out the conversation today, I'd like to ask all of you any closing thoughts on how companies can best leverage these practices, just tracking what you're doing in order to help improve what Jackie said were the solutions for the problems that we're facing today and tomorrow. What are some of the things that companies can do to help improve on those practices?
Eric, I do believe that, given that I've come over to Nielsen, what gets measured gets done. And in all of our goals, we have put metrics, top of line. But the important thing, I think, for all of us and during these critical times is that we are in the community, that we stay in these communities and amplify the voice that we care, and that we're not just, speaking out of turn, just amplify that we care, show that we care through the programs that we are developing and we have every year, but also enhance those by our leaders and our talent. And I am very, very grateful that the people here at Nielsen are really involved. They are involved, and we contribute to many foundations. And it's not just for what is returned to us, but also when we can be involved in communities, then that we are committed to you. And we can't just represent, from a void. We have to know who we're talking to, who we're involved with. And this is about educating people too, as they become more involved in different organizations that represent the Hispanic community. I am very grateful to be involved with this. And I know this is our second year, but we're going to stay the course. So thank you.
No, thank you, Sandra. And You're all here not by accident. Sandra Nielsen, we invited as part of this panel, particularly because you're a relatively new company and have found success not only in our benchmarking, but also in tracking these figures. Jackie, Comcast has been a participant for a very long time with HACR, and for 3 years running is a 5-star company in each one of our 4 pillars of employment, procurement, philanthropy, and governance. It's the only company to be there. And Tony City, also a longtime participant of HACR, and has seen tremendous growth and improvements in its diversity inclusion practices, and is still hungry to continue to improve. I see, some of the most enthusiastic participants and points of contact are from City, because they're so just engaged with this process. You're here for that reason, in order to communicate not just to our participants, but to all of our constituents, that this is important. And so I thank you, Sandra, for that. I'd like to hear, Jackie and Tony, what are your thoughts on that same question?
I'll just go to say that, as we've achieved these 5 stars for these 3 years, that's not a final destination. That's not the pat on the back that we're doing this for. And I think one of the parts of the relationship with HACR and even these virtual convenings, right? The shared goals that all the companies that come together and participate in the survey have is really about making this, this larger, something larger than we are, much better for everyone, and particularly here for the Hispanic community. I think, when we're talking about what companies need to do, measurement is that daily practice that you have to do. It doesn't always feel good. The results aren't always what you want them to be. But again, it's that process of revisiting and revisiting. I think that today, right, given these just unprecedented times, whether we're talking about the pandemic and how it's changed all of our social norms, the social injustice, the unrest that's happening in cities across America, and a lot of the political upheaval that's happened. Regardless of the topic, I think that another huge piece of this for companies moving forward is being listeners and having those trusted partners that can help guide a company to make good decisions, not just for the bottom line, but for the people that they employ, for the people that they serve on a daily basis. And I think that is another component of this relationship, and the work that needs to be done is to be listening and to be thoughtful about how our entire world has changed and how it will continue to change. And one part about this that I think successful companies do well is that they don't phone it in, right? They go back to the experts time and time again, and those experts can be, the HACR team here in DC that you can pick up the phone and have a trusted, honest conversation. But also in our workforces, we have the experts, right? There are people, and that's one of the beautiful things about diversity, is to have those experts inside your company and to be able to, use their mind share as well to make the best decisions for the company going forward. And I think that is, maybe part of this pipeline discussion that we need to focus more on, that the expertise to reach that new market, right? Before everyone was talking about millennials or, whoever Gen, whatever they are now, but, being able to reach out and connect with those folks along the corporate pipeline is critical, because they are the best voice and conscience of that customer. And again, listening and having these conversations will make all the difference for the larger decisions that need to be made.
Thank you, Jackie. Tony, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, so I would say, just in closing, a couple of things. First of all, HACR has made us better. The standards that and the ability to share and to be responsible and accountable to the survey, because that's how we see it, right? You measure, right? You get what you measure. So HACR has made us better, and that's really important. Our partnerships with other groups like High Tech, which allows us to recruit Hispanics in technology. All of those associations help a company like City just get better. And what is exciting for me, and what I really enjoy about what I do, is the ability to amplify the Latino voice throughout city and the communities that we do business in. Our employee resource groups, our affinity groups, the number of volunteer hours and the amount of work that they do in the communities to really drive meaningful change. We have to capture and harness all of that and turn it into a story that we have to do a better job of telling, because I think we do a great job, but sometimes we may not necessarily do a fantastic job at telling that story. So ASET helps us with that. It helps to quantify that. It allows us to really focus on those 4 key areas, especially around supply diversity and governance, philanthropy. And so I would just say, continue to challenge us, and we will continue to step up and deliver, because this is important. It's important to our community, and it's important to our business to ensure that Latinos in corporate America have opportunities, and that their diversity of thought is able to drive corporate strategy. And really, that's all we can ask for, is our ability to be at a level playing field. So thank you, and thanks to ASET for helping us get better.
Thank you for that, Tony. And, you know, it really has been about partnership, and all of our participants, particularly those who have been with us for a while and those starting out with us, we've seen so much change in how not just they're benchmarking with our metrics, but also how they're thinking about this. I think, you know, just looking back at my 5 years of experience here on HACR, and then also the 10 years of data that we have available to us, there seems to have been a tremendous shift in how companies are viewing how to make improvements here. It used to be, I mean, I would put it that they used to be seen as charity, something that had to be done, or they felt like was required of them. But now I feel like the word partnership really summarizes how many companies are viewing this today, and that that partnership envelops and is part of all aspects of their business, whether it be their talent management, employment, their diversity, the diversity of their suppliers, and in philanthropy as well. And there especially the dynamic is most important, that it's not about, you know, just giving some money to the community, but partnering with the community to understand where their needs are, because the community is your base of talent, is where you get a lot of your talent from, and it also is your base for customers. And so that growth and that change has been very pronounced in our data and in our research. I'd like to know if each of you has also experienced or has noticed that these changes have occurred as well. Not at your current companies necessarily, but if you have that, that's fine. But generally speaking, within your experience as professionals in this space.
I'll just respond to you, Eric, because I think that what you said there is very true, right? That this has become what was once viewed as, you know, sort of a nice to do, check the box, right? This is what's driving corporate strategy across, you know, our country, and I think really across the world now. And that, you know, leaders in many different companies have seen that if they don't respond to the challenges that their workforces face. I mean, this is about being prepared for the workforce of the future. This is about having a secure supply chain. This is about having, you know, so many important components of the business that really are kind of make it or break it, you know, live or die decisions. And so I think, you know, if you can, you know, identify opportunities and develop this, you know, Hispanic leadership, I think, you know, first and foremost, there is an innovator that will come and identify how to reach that market better than you, faster than you, cheaper than you, and it's a sad story from there on out. So I think, you know, we're seeing that we're looking to our partners, you know, obviously to do good in the communities where our employees live and work, but also to help us determine what our next steps are if we're, you know, launching television shows and streaming services, or creating new high-speed internet products that can help, you know, migrant, undocumented families, you know, folks, you know, that are your cord cutters, right, that don't want TV but a high-speed internet connection. All those pieces of our business really have come from these in-depth conversations with partners that really are transforming our entire economy. And I think, given the hardship we've seen today, it's only intensified.
Eric, let me address that as well. Certainly because of Nielsen and the data that we have and that we report on, and we just reported on our Hispanic Heritage Month, our annual report. And I personally, again, having been here 8 months, it was about education. And I do believe that, alleviating ignorance and racism and discrimination has to do with education. If you don't know who people are, then you have this preconceived notion. And so with the kinds of reports that we develop and we put out to our clients, it helps them move further away from stereotypes that we must eradicate. And eradicating that lifts up who people really are, who these communities are. And I think that's very important for business, but it's certainly important for culture, and it's important for all of us as we are connected as human beings.
Thank you, Sandra. And Tony, we'll let you have the last word.
That's rough. I would say that a couple of things. First of all, as we think about our communities, some of the partnerships that we engage in really allow us to help and reach those that need the most help. We've got some great partnerships with Inclusive, who is an organization that is primarily catering to the undocumented community, to individuals who might need credit services from credit unions, and will help sponsor and fund those activities. I think at the end of the day, when I think about our role, and I'll give you just a brief example, right? I'm an old-timer at Citi. This is my 31st year, and my first role at Citi was as a part-time customer service agent. 31 years later, I run an organization that's about 7,000 people, and I take that seriously. I have a responsibility to be visible and to demonstrate to our Latino employees and the broader community that there are opportunities at Citi, and that I am a benefactor of the investment that Citi continues to make in the development of talent. So this topic for us is a topic that will define how we effectively compete in the marketplace for talent. And to the point that Jackie made and the point that Sandra made, it's only getting more difficult. Although even in this pandemic world, there are opportunities, and it's just been so interesting to see the creativity around how individuals are taking this challenge and turning it into an opportunity. And those are the kinds of future leaders that we want to attract and that we want to have on our team to help us move forward. So we significantly have the ability, individually and collectively, to make that difference for our population of Latino employees that are hard workers, that have a significant heritage of really driving change in this country, and that's exciting. I mean, I guess that's the way that I would say it. It's just it's come to the limelight. Maybe it's taken a really long time, but it's exciting.
I would certainly agree, Tony. But I'd like to say I could stay here all day and talk to you guys, because this is, these are topics that are close to my heart, and I know that you guys are passionate about it too. But unfortunately,
everyone's smiling when they're talking. Everyone's smiling about their work. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much to each of you for not just your partnership, but your participation today and your continued partnership with HACR. We really appreciate this exchange that we're having here today. We hope that our audience has enjoyed and has learned something from our discussion today. If you have any questions about the HACR Corporate Inclusion Index or the HACR Research Institute, please email us at research@hacer.org. I will turn it back to Dr. Lisette Garcia for closing remarks.
Thank you, Eric. And Thank you to Tony, Jackie, and Sandra for your time and willingness to share what your companies are doing to increase Hispanic representation, not only in employment, but also in procurement, philanthropy, and governance. And I'll add too, if you have any questions that can't wait about the CII, you can always visit Eric and the team in the CII booth. And once again, thank you everyone for joining us for this session today. And before we move on to the next session on the agenda, please stay tuned for a few words from our sponsor.
Thanks, Lisette. The work we do at HACR would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. Our sponsors provide the support necessary to help us achieve our mission and are crucial to what we do here at HACR.
I will go forward for my land and my legacy. Onward, forward, creating our destiny. Our past made history. I feel it in my soul and in my memory. My community lifts me higher, and I will go forward together with them.
You have the power to inspire the world. We connect you to everything that helps you move forward.
Thank you, Comcast, for your continued support. And thank you for joining us today for the key findings from the 2020 HACR Corporate Inclusion Index. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please join us for Aligning Inclusion with Business Strategy through ERGs, starting at 12:15. Please feel free to visit the exhibit hall or head over to the networking lounge to engage with other attendees during the upcoming networking break. See you soon.